My name is Sophie Bennett, a 44-year-old commercial architect in Vancouver, Canada. 3 nights ago, I learned my husband, of 12 years, Ethan Carter, was done with me. I sat in my home office, staring at an email he sent from a wellness retreat in Banff. His words hit like a brick wall. He'd moved my inheritance $587,000 into his personal account, believing it was better this way. Attached was a blurry photo of him, with a woman long dark hair, standing on a balcony sunset behind them, wineglasses in hand. His smile was brighter than anything he'd given me in years. The email sent at 11:22 p.m. His time had no greeting, just a cold declaration like he'd already left our life. That money came from my Aunt Margaret, who raised me after my parents died when I was 14, worked double shifts at the hospital to get me through college, and left it all to me with a note: build something that lasts. I closed my laptop, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and gripped the counter. That money wasn't just cash, it was Margaret's sacrifice. Ethan thought he could take it. My phone showed no missed calls or texts from him, just silence, as if he was already living his new life with that woman. The signs had been there for months, but I ignored them, trusting him. His wellness retreats grew longer, from 2 days to entire weeks. His phone was always face down, passwords changed, conversations short. 3 months ago, he asked odd questions about the inheritance, where it was, which accounts held it if we should diversify. I said I'd think about it, but something felt off. I read his email a third time, noticing he didn't soften the theft, just laid it out like a done deal. I typed 6 words in response, hit send without hesitating. Thanks for letting me know, Ethan. I closed the laptop, finished my water, went upstairs to our bedroom, climbed into our king-sized bed alone. I realized something that should have hurt more, but didn't. I slept better, knowing he wasn't coming back. Ethan didn't know I'd sensed trouble months ago. The inheritance was never where he thought it was. His email gave me everything I needed to unravel his plan. I met Ethan 15 years ago at a design conference in Toronto. He was pitching his organic skincare brand, needed architects for his first store. I was 5 years into my career, desperate for projects beyond office towers or parking lots. We married 3 years later, built a life in Vancouver, bought a house on West 10th Avenue with a big front porch he always wanted. We didn't have kids. His business was his baby, he said. I got it because my buildings were mine. For 8 years it worked. I designed, he grew his brand with retreats and products. We traveled, threw dinner parties, looked perfect to everyone else. Then Margaret got sick with cancer that moved fast. I took a 6-month leave to care for her in Victoria. Ethan visited twice, saying hospitals made him uncomfortable. I didn't push it. When she died, she left everything to me. The money shocked me. I didn't know she'd saved so carefully. Ethan was shocked too, suddenly cared about our finances in ways he never had. He suggested using it to expand his business. I said I needed to think about what Margaret would want. That was the first crack in us. His trips grew frequent, for supplier meetings or research calls, short. I'd hear voices in the background that went quiet when I asked who was there. Our neighbor Lucas stopped by one afternoon while Ethan was at a retreat in Whistler, mentioned seeing a woman drop Ethan off late the week before when I was at a conference in Montreal. I thanked him for the cookies his wife sent, filed it away. Ethan's banking apps got new passwords, talks about money stopped when I asked questions. One night, I caught him on the phone in the backyard, laughing in a way he hadn't with me in years. He said it was his assistant Chloe, but I knew Chloe quit 6 months earlier. I nodded, watched him pour wine, changed the subject, knew something was breaking, but only one of us was honest about it. 2 weeks before his last retreat, my firm's financial advisor Liam called, said someone tried accessing my trust accounts using my personal info, failed the security questions. I asked which accounts, he confirmed the inheritance funds. I thanked him, hung up, sat at my desk, anger bubbling because I knew it was Ethan. That night, Ethan suggested simplifying our accounts, saying separate logins were silly without looking at me. I agreed to talk to Liam, but instead drove to Victoria, met my aunt's lawyer, Claire Thompson, who'd handled her estate for 20 years. I laid out the facts without crying, just the truth. Claire said Margaret was smart to put the money in an irrevocable trust protected, no matter what happened in my marriage. If someone tried moving those funds without permission, it was financial fraud with serious consequences. I told her to set up a monitoring system to track any attempts to access or change the trust. She nodded, got to work. When I got home, Ethan was packing for his retreat, kissed me quick, said he might extend this one to focus. I helped load his bags, watched him drive off, felt a strange calm because I was done pretending. I didn't check his emails, or texts didn't call his friends. I opened our shared cloud storage, found screenshots of my accounts notes about transfer protocols, a photo of a whiteboard with my inheritance, minus 20% labeled transfer fee. He'd been planning this for months. I wasn't shocked, just clear-headed, ready to act. The morning after Ethan's email, I woke up in our Vancouver bedroom, felt burning clarity. I wasn't letting him walk away with $587,000 that Margaret left me to build something real. I didn't cry, scream, or call him begging for answers. That's not who I am. I got out of bed, opened my laptop, forwarded his email to Claire, in Victoria, with a note. Please document this. I sent it to Liam too, because I needed people who knew what they were doing. Claire replied within an hour, confirming she'd received it. The email spoke for itself. Liam called saying someone tried accessing my trust accounts again that morning, using my social insurance number failed, the security questions. I knew it was Ethan doubling down. I thanked Liam, told him to keep monitoring, sat at my desk, felt a wave of anger. Ethan wasn't just stealing, he was betting I'd be too shocked to fight back. What he didn't know was I'd been piecing things together for weeks. His email lit the fuse. I thought back to how Ethan's behavior shifted over the past year. His wellness retreats weren't about yoga or skincare. They were about her, the woman in that blurry photo with dark hair, wineglass in hand. I remembered how he came home from his last Whistler trip, barely looked at me. His suitcase smelled like perfume that wasn't mine. I didn't say anything, hoping I was wrong. Lucas mentioned seeing a woman drop Ethan off late one night when I was in Montreal driving a silver Audi. I thanked him, filed it away. Now it was clear. Ethan had been building another life while I designed buildings, paid our bills, kept our house running. I opened our shared bank account, saw withdrawals. I hadn't noticed, because I trusted him to handle joint finances. Small at first, $2,000, then $3,500, then a big one 2 weeks ago, for $47,000, all going to an account I didn't recognize. I called our bank manager, Olivia, at Pacific Coast Bank, asked her to pull the transaction history. She hesitated, said there'd been significant withdrawals over 6 months, totaling $178,000 to an account at Northern Lakes Credit Union. I asked if it was in Ethan's name. She said, yes, opened 8 months ago with an address in Banff, not Vancouver. My stomach twisted. That's where he was with her. I told Olivia to print the full history, hung up, gripped my phone. Ethan hadn't just taken my inheritance. He'd been draining our life for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Did you get my email? I stared at it, typed back. Yes. He wrote, that's all you have to say. I didn't respond. I wasn't giving him a fight. I called. Claire told her about the bank withdrawals, the Banff address. She said the trust was safe because Margaret blocked unauthorized access, but the joint account money was different. We'd need to document everything for a divorce filing. She recommended a Vancouver lawyer, Noah Sullivan, who specialized in financial misconduct cases. I set up a meeting with him that afternoon. I wasn't waiting for Ethan's next move. Before heading to Noah's office, I checked our cloud storage, found more files Ethan hadn't deleted. Screenshots of my trust account statements, transfer instructions, a lease agreement for a Banff apartment in his name, dated 6 months ago. I downloaded everything, emailed it to Claire and Noah, with a note. Here's what he's been doing. I felt a strange calm. Every piece of evidence was another nail in his plan. At Noah's office, he pulled up the documents Claire joined by video call. They said the email and attempted transfers created a clear paper trail. The inheritance was never marital property. Ethan's actions were fraud. Noah said we should file for divorce immediately, citing financial misconduct, since British Columbia law doesn't mess around with fraud. I signed the paperwork right there. I was done playing Ethan's game. As I left Noah's office, Ethan called. I answered, wanting to hear what he'd say. He started. "You're being ridiculous, Sophie. This doesn't have to be hard." I said. "I agree." He said. "The money's already moved fighting. It will just cost us both in legal fees." I asked where he was staying. He paused, thrown off, said, "What does that matter?" I said, "I'm just curious where home is now." He said, "Let's focus on the financial arrangements. My lawyer's drawing up settlement papers. It's better to keep this clean." I asked who his lawyer was. He said, "David Lawrence." I wrote it down, said, "That's helpful." He said, "Are you even listening? This doesn't have to be complicated." I said, "You already said that," kept my voice steady. I wasn't letting him think he'd won. He said, "It's for the best. Sophie, we've been drifting apart for years. This is cleaner than dragging it out." I said, "You're right. Cleaner is better." Hung up, felt a rush of power. He thought I was breaking, but I was building my case. I texted Noah David's name, then sent Ethan a message. "Taking some time to process, we'll reach out when I'm ready to discuss details." He replied, "Don't wait too long. Papers will be ready by Friday." I smiled. Friday was 3 days away. I was 2 steps ahead. That evening, Claire called, said the trust company recorded 3 more transfer attempts that day, all blocked, documented with IP addresses, timestamps showing they came from Banff, not Whistler, like Ethan claimed. She said they'd found suspicious activity from last month where someone exported my account details from our home network. I thanked her, hung up, stood in our kitchen holding a glass of water. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated plan Ethan thought he'd perfected. I wasn't shocked anymore, just ready to make sure he'd face every consequence. The day after I sent Ethan that text, David Lawrence called. His careful tone told me things were getting real. I was ready to push back. He said, "Mr. Carter indicated you're open to a straightforward settlement." I let him talk, wanting to hear how far Ethan's lies had gone, said, "What exactly did he tell you about our situation?" David hesitated, said, "Ethan mentioned you understood the division of assets, including the recent inheritance funds." I asked if he'd seen documentation of those funds. He said, "Ethan provided statements from 3 months ago, was working on transfer confirmations." I kept my voice steady, said, "Has he told you about the irrevocable trust my Aunt Margaret set up, the legal impossibility of what he's claiming to have done?" The long silence told me everything. I said, "David, I suggest you verify what Ethan's fed you. My lawyer, Noah Sullivan, will send you the trust documents today." I hung up, felt fire in my chest. Ethan thought he could bluff his way through, but I was done letting him play me. I drove to Pacific Coast Bank, where Olivia had the transaction history ready, showed me more withdrawals from our joint account, funneled to Northern Lakes Credit Union. The total was now $192,000, with the latest transfer of $15,000 yesterday. I asked Olivia to trace the receiving account. She confirmed it was tied to a Banff apartment lease under Ethan's name and a woman named Abigail Moran, who I didn't know, but was sure was the one in the blurry photo. I told Olivia to freeze our joint account, print every record going back a year. She nodded, got to work. I felt rage and focus. Ethan wasn't just stealing, he was building a new life while I paid our mortgage. Back home, I called Noah, told him about the Banff apartment Abigail. He said he'd have someone dig into her. We needed to know who we were dealing with. I said I also wanted Lucas to give a statement about the woman he saw dropping Ethan off. Noah agreed. said he'd sent David the trust documents, a letter outlining Ethan's attempted fraud. I could hear confidence in his voice. We had Ethan cornered. That afternoon, Lucas came over. I showed him the photo from Ethan's email. He squinted, said, "Yeah, that's her, the woman in the silver Audi at your house 5 or 6 times when you were traveling." I asked if he'd sign a statement. He said, "Of course I didn't like Ethan's vibe anyway." I thanked him, sent his notarized statement to Noah, felt a surge of power. Every piece of evidence locked Ethan's lies in place. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Sophie." I didn't reply. I wasn't letting him pull me into his drama. "Claire called," said the trust company logged. "Another failed attempt to access my $587,000 inheritance, that morning IP address, matching the Banff apartment." She said they were preparing to refer it to their legal team for a fraud investigation. I told her to go ahead, document everything. Felt calm. Ethan was digging his own grave. That evening, David Lawrence called again, his tone different, like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. He said, "I've reviewed the trust documentation. It appears my client misrepresented his ability to access those funds. I'd like to discuss a revised approach." I said, "Noah's already filed for divorce, citing financial misconduct. The evidence speaks for itself." David said he'd need to speak with Ethan, might withdraw as counsel. I said, "That's probably smart." Hung up. Felt a rush. Ethan's own lawyer was bailing. "Noah called," said David's pulling out by end of day. "No legit attorney wants to touch this mess. We're adding the $192,000 Ethan took from the joint account to the filing, so he can explain it to a judge." I said, "There's one more thing. I need to know who Abigail Morin is, not to confront her, but to understand how far Ethan's been planning this while I was building our life." Noah said he'd get someone on it. I thanked him, hung up, stood in my kitchen, gripping my phone. The betrayal wasn't just about money. It was every moment I thought we were a team. My doorbell rang. A courier delivered an envelope from David Lawrence, officially withdrawing, as Ethan's lawyer copies sent to Ethan and the court. I knew the dominoes were falling. My phone lit up with Ethan's name. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times, texted, "What the hell did you do, Sophie?" I didn't answer. I wasn't playing his game. While eating dinner alone, I got an email from Claire, saying the trust company's investigation confirmed multiple unauthorized attempts over 3 months, all logged with timestamps, IP addresses referred for potential criminal charges. I forwarded it to Noah. Felt strange peace. Ethan thought he'd set the trap, but he'd walked into mine. Around 9 p.m., Ethan texted, "We need to talk now." I replied, "Through your new lawyer when you get one." He said, "You're overreacting. I didn't actually move anything. I was just angry when I sent that email." I said, "That's not what the access logs show." He went quiet, then texted, "What access logs?" I sent one question back. "Who is she?" 20 minutes later he replied, "This isn't about her." I said, "Name." He said, "Abigail. She's not important. Just a friend, helping me through this." I said, "Last name Morin, you're focusing on the wrong thing." I didn't text back. I didn't need to. I searched Abigail Morin, found her LinkedIn. She ran a yoga studio in Banff, used to be a marketing consultant. She was the piece Ethan thought I'd never find. The next morning, I met Lucas, asked if he'd seen the silver Audi recently. He said, "Yeah, a few weeks ago, when Ethan was back for a day." I thanked him, felt clarity. Ethan's lies were unraveling faster than he could spin them. The morning after David bailed, Noah called, said Ethan hired Philip Harper, a big-shot Vancouver divorce attorney, known for playing dirty. I knew the fight would get uglier, but I was ready. I had everything Ethan didn't expect. Noah said Harper requested an emergency hearing for Monday to contest the financial misconduct claim. The claimed Ethan and I agreed on all financial decisions, including the $192,000 he took from our joint account. I felt hot anger. Ethan was still lying back against the wall. Noah said Harper's claiming Ethan has proof we discussed moving the $587,000 inheritance. I said, let's give him something to choke on. I was done with Ethan's games. I told Noah to compile every piece of evidence, deliver it to Harper's office. By end of day, I wanted Ethan to see how deep he'd dug himself. Noah agreed, said he'd include the trust access logs, showing Ethan's failed attempts, bank records of the $192,000 withdrawals to Northern Lakes Credit Union Banff apartment lease, with Ethan and Abigail's names. Lucas's notarized statement about Abigail's visits, screenshots from our cloud storage, where Ethan kept notes on stealing my inheritance. Olivia's bank report, showing the latest $15,000 transfer, Claire's email about the trust company, referring Ethan's fraud to their legal team. I wanted Harper to know this wasn't just a divorce. It was a reckoning. By noon, Noah's assistant called, said the package was on its way to Harper's office. I felt a surge of focus. I could picture Ethan's face when his new lawyer saw the truth. Around 3 p.m., Noah called, said Harper's office requested an urgent meeting to discuss settlement options. I knew they'd cracked no lawyer. Like Harper backs down unless the evidence is airtight. Noah said Harper offered a clean split. Ethan keeps the $192,000 he took, makes no claim on the inheritance. I keep the house, the $587,000. I said, no way Ethan doesn't get to walk away with our money, like nothing happened. I told Noah to counter. Ethan returns half the joint account money, $96,000, signs a non-disclosure agreement so he can't talk about our marriage or divorce to anyone. In exchange, I won't push fraud charges on the trust attempts. Noah said, that's generous, considering we could bury him. I said, I don't want to drag this out. I want it done. I'm tired of carrying Ethan's lies. Noah drafted the settlement, set up a meeting for Monday morning instead of the hearing. I agreed I wanted to see Ethan's reaction when he realized he'd lost. That evening, Ethan texted, you're ruining everything. Sophie, this could have been easy. I didn't reply. His words didn't matter. Claire called, said the trust company's legal team escalated. The fraud case, we're preparing to hand it to the RCMP if we didn't settle. I told her to hold off until after Monday. I wanted Ethan to feel the pressure. Sunday night, I reviewed the evidence package. Noah sent felt strange calm. Every document from bank records to Lucas's statement to IP logs laid bare Ethan's betrayal. I slept better that night than I had in months. I wasn't just fighting, I was winning. Monday morning, I arrived at Noah's office for the settlement meeting. Ethan was there with Harper. I saw strain on his face like he hadn't slept in days. Noah laid out the terms. Ethan returns $96,000. Within 24 hours, makes no claims on the inheritance or other assets. Signs the non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, I won't pursue fraud charges for the trust attempts. Harper reviewed the evidence file, with trust logs, bank records, lease agreement. Lucas's statement whispered something to Ethan, who nodded slowly, like he knew he was out of moves. Ethan looked at me, defiance in his eyes, but it faded fast when Noah slid the settlement agreement across the table. Harper said, my client accepts the terms. Ethan signed with a shaky hand. I signed my part, felt a weight lift. It was almost over. I slid an envelope to Ethan. He asked, what's this? I said, the passwords to the cloud storage house alarm. Anything else you might need to get your stuff from the house. He stared at me, looking for anger or victory, but I didn't give him either. I was done letting him take up space in my head. Harper touched Ethan's arm. They stood to leave. Ethan clutched the envelope, walked out without looking back. I felt quiet peace. I'd taken back my life. After they left, Noah said, we could have pushed for more, like the full $192,000 or public fraud charges. I said, this is enough. I didn't want Ethan's shadow hanging over me. I drove to Pacific Coast Bank, met Olivia, who confirmed Ethan initiated the $96,000 transfer. It'd clear by tomorrow. I thanked her, felt clarity. Every step closed the door on him. That afternoon, Noah called, said Harper, sent confirmation of the signed agreement. The non-disclosure was in effect. I thanked him, hung up, stood in my kitchen, holding a glass of water. The fight was over, but the betrayal still stung. I thought about Abigail Morin, how Ethan planned this with her for months while sleeping in our bed, eating at our table. I felt an ache, not for him, but for the years I trusted him. Noah called later, said his contact found more on Abigail. She'd been Ethan's business partner for a year, listed on his company's new Banff branch. I nodded. It didn't surprise me. I texted Lucas to thank him. He replied, saying, he saw the silver Audi at our house last week when Ethan grabbed clothes. I said, good to know. Saved it in case Ethan tried anything later. By evening, I got an email from Claire saying the trust company paused the fraud investigation since we settled. I forwarded it to Noah, felt a final piece click into place. Ethan was out of my life for good. I sat at my desk, looked at a photo of Margaret on the wall, knew she'd be proud I didn't just protect her money, I protected myself. The day after Ethan signed, the settlement walked out with that envelope. I stood in our Vancouver house on West 10th Avenue. Realized I couldn't stay. Every room held pieces of a life that didn't exist. I called a realtor, Emma Wilson, who'd worked with my firm, told her I wanted to sell fast. She came over that afternoon, walked through, noted the big front porch garden beds I'd planted with roses years ago, said it'd go quick. Families loved this neighborhood. Within 2 weeks, we had an offer from a couple with young twins who loved the porch space for their kids. I signed the papers, felt relief. I was letting go of Ethan's shadow. I used the sale money to buy a small condo downtown near my firm's office, moved in with just a bed couch. Few boxes, I didn't need much. Wanted a fresh start. I sat in that condo one night, thought about Margaret's note to build something that lasts, knew the $587,000 inheritance wasn't meant to sit in a bank. I called Claire, in Victoria, told her I wanted to set up a foundation to fund scholarships for kids who'd lost parents like I had. She said, Margaret would have loved that. Got to work drafting the paperwork. We named it. The Margaret Bennett Foundation, poured the entire inheritance into it. I wanted it to mean something bigger than me. The first scholarship went to a 17-year-old girl from Kelowna, Mia Patel, who wrote an essay about designing community centers for foster kids. I read it, felt warmth. Her words echoed what I'd spent my career chasing. Claire called the day we awarded Mia, the scholarship said. You're doing exactly what Margaret wanted. I smiled for the first time. In months I felt like I was building instead of fighting. A few weeks later, grabbing mail from my condo's lobby, I found an envelope with no return address inside a check for $96,000 a note. The rest of what I owed, not just the money, no signature, but I knew it was Ethan. I stared at that. Check felt quiet closure. He'd paid back the last of the $192,000 he took from our joint account. It wasn't about the money. It was him admitting he'd lost. I deposited the check into the foundation's account the next day, told Claire to fund another scholarship. I wanted every dollar of Ethan's betrayal to build something good. That evening, I thought about the life Ethan and I planned years ago when we talked about opening a wellness studio together, me designing the space, him running programs. I realized that dream died long before he sent that email. My phone buzzed with a text from Liam. Dinner's still on for 7. I'm bringing that architect I mentioned. I checked the time, had just enough to change head to the restaurant. I texted back. On my way, felt a spark of something new. I was open to whatever came next. The next morning, I met Noah for coffee. He said Ethan's company filed for bankruptcy last week. Abigail Morin pulled out of their Banff branch, took half the investors with her. I nodded. It didn't surprise me. Felt like justice. Noah said the non-disclosure agreement was holding. Ethan hadn't said a word about our divorce. I thanked him for everything he'd fought for me when I needed it most. I walked back to my condo, thought about Abigail, how she'd been part of Ethan's plan, but I didn't hate her. She was just another piece of his lies. A few days later, Lucas texted saying he saw Ethan's car at the old house one last time, picking up boxes before the new family moved in. I replied, "Thanks for the heads up." Felt nothing. Ethan was just a memory now. I kept working at my firm designing buildings that mattered, like community centers, affordable housing, poured energy into the foundation. Every scholarship honored Margaret's sacrifice. One afternoon, Claire emailed saying the trust company closed their fraud investigation since Ethan paid back the joint account money. I forwarded it to Noah, felt a final weight lift. Nothing tied me to Ethan's mess. I thought about the years I'd trusted him, how he planned his betrayal while I built our life. It still hurt, but not like it used to. I was stronger now. My phone rang. Mia, the scholarship recipient, said she'd started her first architecture class, wanted to thank me. I listened to her excitement, felt pride. She was proof I was doing something right. That night, I sat at my desk, looked at a photo of Margaret and me, from when I was a teenager, remembered her telling me to always protect what matters. I knew I'd done that, not just with her money, but with myself. I got an email from Emma saying the new family in the West 10th house sent a picture of their twins playing in the garden. I smiled. That house was their story. Now not mine. I thought about Ethan and Abigail, the life they tried to steal, realized I didn't need revenge. Rebuilding was stronger. The next day, I met Liam and the new architect Sarah, who designed sustainable schools. We talked for hours about projects that could change communities. I felt hope I hadn't had in years. I walked home after dinner, thought about Margaret's note, knew I was building something that'd last not just for me, but for kids like Mia who deserved a chance. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. The foundation's second scholarship was approved. I replied, "Amazing, let's keep going." I wasn't stopping now. I stood in my condo, looked at the empty walls I hadn't decorated, felt peace. I wasn't carrying Ethan's lies anymore. I thought about the check he sent, how it funded another kid's future, knew that was the real victory. I wasn't angry or shocked anymore, just ready for whatever came next, and that was enough. I texted Sarah. "Let's grab coffee next week," smiled. I was saying yes to new beginnings. That's what Margaret would have wanted.